Hey guys, welcome to another tutorial. Today we're going to cover the Arsenal Posterior Chain Developer, or some may call it the Good Morning Machine. There's quite a few adjustments on this, so let's go over them real quick so that you know how to set it up for your build. First off, we'll start from the bottom up. So we're going to start with the foot plate. The foot plate does move on this, and basically that's to account for your hip height. So if your hip joint is higher, you're going to want it lower. If the hip joint is lower, then you're going to want to bring this foot plate up. And our goal with it is to try to line up your hip joint with this pivot point right here. So what I'll do to adjust it, I already know my setting. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this pin right here and then move the foot plate up. And you'll see when I stand up, it's, about even with my hips. If I wanted to go a little higher, I could. But that seems okay for me normally. The next adjustment is going to be for your feet. So what I always like to do is be able to line the ends of my toes with the end of the platform right there. So that's how you want to set your feet, and that's with this adjustment right here. And then another adjustment, as I said, there's a lot, is going to be where you want the hip pad. So typically, I like the hip pad right about where it's at right there. So it's maybe just a tad bit higher than that. So now it's covering my whole hip essentially right there. If it's too low, it's gonna kind of feel a little bit like not as comfortable on the knees. It's gonna feel like it's doing that right there. A little bit higher up on the hips, allow you to really squeeze your glutes and have your hips nice and secure. And the other thing with the hip pad is you can move it forward or back. So the hips can start further back, or they can start further forward. Basically, that's going to be indicative of how far you want your hips to be able to travel back with support. Whereas the more forward you put it, the more you're going to be like leaning over and getting more of like a hamstring, versus if you pull it back, it's going to be more of a glute because it's emphasizing your hips being back further. All right, so then the next adjustment to cover, second to last adjustment, is going to be this pad right here. Typically, I like setting this pad on the lower part of my shoulder blades. If it gets too high, it'll feel like it's trying to roll up on your neck. If that's your thing, whatever. But me, I've always found that having it right there on the lower part of the shoulder blades is very comfortable, and it feels great. So the last adjustment is actually the strength curve. So the more I set this arm forward, the more weight I'm going to feel right at this point right here. So if I set it further up, now I'm going to feel the weight as I'm fully standing. Because as you can see, the lever arm right here, that is where the weight's going to be at its maximum load. Now, the further it goes up, the more this weight actually pivots onto this pillow block right here. So, and then of course, so essentially this right here is just adjusting where you want to feel this load. I usually like it about right there, just slightly forward, because at the bottom, I'll get a little bit more tension right here at the bottom, and as I stand upright, it'll lighten up right there at the top. So which is typically what I try to work on with using this as an accessory for deadlifts, is that off the floor strength, having that load in that stretched position of the hamstrings and glutes. That's what I prefer. And then lastly, we have a band attachment. So if you don't want that to taper off too much at the top, you can actually band it. And there's PVC rollers down here. And this is how it should look when you go to band it. Some people, they'll just hook it up right there at the end, but honestly, that's not the best. The best is actually to run this L formation as it's designed. Hope that answers any questions. It is a complicated machine when you don't really understand the adjustments, but hopefully me taking you through these adjustments, you can kind of find your settings. And my advice is, once you find those, just take pictures with your phone so that you always know where to set it without having to run through this every time. Great machine, excellent for the posterior chain development, and it's definitely something you want to have in your plan if you're trying to grow your deadlift.